Check. Keep it alive, through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc, I rip to a tear. Switch the scenario, my stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio Show. Once again with your host, Nick Bernabe, here on UCY.TV. Super happy to be back with you for our final show of 2015. It's New Year's Eve, and so we're going to be going over some of the big stories in 2015 that we covered, and then, I guess we're going to go over all kinds of interesting ideas that we may be thinking about for 2016, predictions, I don't know, maybe some solutions and things like that. But we definitely got an exciting one in store for you tonight. We've got a couple of awesome guests that are going to be joining us, including my longtime co-host, DB Schwartz. What's up, DB? How you doing?
Not bad, Nick. Just getting into this article about the 15 things that everybody kind of let run under the radar for this year. Pretty interesting stuff, and really, really interesting. Jeffrey Sterling's coming back into the pot. People can understand just how corrupt the very people protecting us really are.
Yeah, that's that's one of the big things we're going to go over tonight is these 15 stories from 2015 that you should have heard about that you might not have. It's the top story right now on the antimedia.org. Anybody listening tonight that wants to kind of go along with us, we're going to go in order. And so you can go through there and listen in, read it while you listen to us talk about it, and you can click through the hyperlinks and go to the sources and get the data and the information, all that stuff, because this is all stuff that really has an impact on us in our lives and our freedom and our, just the general state of affairs going on here in the United States, the world, foreign policy, the police state, all that stuff. We're going to be talking about all that tonight, and this is all important stuff. I mean, this isn't, Kim Kardashian balancing a champagne glass on her ass, and this isn't, Justin Bieber drag racing in a Lamborghini. We're going to talk about some shit that actually matters tonight, and this is the stuff. This is the information that we like bringing to you at the Anti-Media. This is the dangerous information. This is the information that they don't want you to see. This is what we're going to be talking about tonight. Anyway, to help us break through all this distraction noise and get down to the real nitty-gritty of what really matters, we have Jake Anderson joining us tonight. What's up, Jake?
Not much, man. I just finished an article, an op-ed about how in the future robots will have more rights than humans. So my head is kind of in a weird place right now. But I'm looking through these 15 stories, and I agree this is a great, manifestation of what the value of what we're trying to do with anti-media, the value of anti-media in this media landscape that will latch on to anything in order to distract us from these very issues. Although I must say, I do think Kim Kardashian balancing a champagne glass on her ass should very well be in these 15.
Yeah, that is one of the stories the media really didn't cover very well, apparently, even though it quote-unquote broke the internet. And also joining us tonight, we have Claire Bernish, who wrote a lot of the stories that are in this top 15 list. Claire, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing so incredibly good tonight, for once.
Awesome. Well, I'm over here enjoying a beer, getting ready for this New Year's Eve, and I'm hoping to have some fun tonight on the show, and I guess we'll see where this thing takes us tonight. We got all these stories to cover and so little time to do it in. So I guess we're just going to start breaking into this stuff. Before we do that, anybody... we're not going to be taking many calls tonight, unfortunately, just because we have so much to go over. But anyone already on the call, my panel here, any New Year's stuff you guys want to get out there right now before we delve into this, because you never know how it's going to go. We may end up going balls to the walls, so to speak, until the end of the program here. So anything you guys want to get off your chest now? How about it? Let's go in order. DB, anything?
Hey, just, maybe you can answer this, Nick, still being in California, but with the firearm seizure law passing starting on January 1st, does anybody in their right mind have any question anymore about what's beginning?
Oh, I mean, it is pretty telling, man. This is a pretty interesting topic. I was talking about it with some of my friends here today that came and visited me that were worried about this law, and Claire actually wrote the article on it. But it is pretty frightening. But it's just another erosion of our, I guess, civil liberties. One thing that isn't on the list today is an interesting angle that I saw being pointed out by several in the media is this case of the 12-year-old that was gunned down over in Cleveland. Is where's the NRA on this? You know what I mean? I mean, aren't they all about protecting your right to carry firearm? Where's the NRA on this story? Because in all for all we know, I mean, the kid was well within his rights. They didn't know if he was under 18 or not when they rolled up and shot him within 2 seconds.
That's a good point.
You're allowed to carry firearms in Ohio. They didn't check for his permit. They didn't check for his ID, anything like that. And I don't even know if they have to, but they didn't. They just gunned him down. And so, again, the NRA doesn't. It's inconsistent. In fact,
No, it's consistent, Nick. It's rich white taxpayers.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I was reading some history about the NRA, and apparently, during the reign of the Black Panthers, they actually lobbied for gun control, apparently. And so, that kind of lets you know where that organization stands with this. There's a much better organization called the Gun Owners of America, the GOA, which has a much better track record than the NRA. I think the NRA is just one of those polarizing divide and conquer organizations that is used to pit liberal against Democrat or liberal against conservative. And they don't actually do much.
It's the Charlton Heston Singles Club, dude.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, so let's break into these stories. Anybody out there listening tonight, if you want to follow along with us, it's called 15 News Stories from 2015. You should have heard about, but probably didn't. Of course, we covered all of these stories, and unless you follow the website really closely, you may not have heard about all 15 of these. We're going to try to get through as many of these as possible. The first one is CISA, C-I-S-A, which is the new reincarnation of CISPA, and of course we know it also by the name of SOPA. And anybody that knows the history of this bill knows that it was Aaron Schwartz that was very much spearheading the opposition to this back in the day. Aaron Schwartz was a brilliant internet guy. He helped lay the foundation of Reddit. He invented a lot of the infrastructure that's being used right now for the internet. In fact, I think he also had something to do with RSS feeds. And very, very brilliant young man who ended up supposedly committing suicide while awaiting trial while in jail for liberating information from a college and putting it online and that kind of thing.
He's a hero.
What was that?
He put a free library online.
He's a hero. This is the theft he committed. He stole basically information available in a university library and made it available online. And for that, the prosecutors were going to basically ruin his life to make a point. And anyway, that's a endless rabbit hole we can go down there. Anyway, the point I wanted to make is that Aaron Schwartz is a hero, in my opinion.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. And so CISA was more or less, another name it went under was PIPA. they've renamed this thing like 4 times, and they renamed it and tried to sneak it into bills and stuff. And they had been unsuccessful for a long time, but they finally got it passed in October, and Congress passed it, and I think, Obama signed it. They snuck it into a large budget bill called the Omnibus. And basically, according to the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is an awesome organization, by the way, quote, CISA is fundamentally flawed. The bill's broad immunity clauses, vague definitions, and aggressive spying powers combine to make the bill a surveillance bill in disguise. Further, the bill does not address problems from the recent highly publicized computer data breaches that were caused by unencrypted files, poor computer architecture, unupdated servers, and employees or contractors clicking on malware links. So basically, anytime that there's a hack or anytime information is leaked, the politicians kind of take a opportunistic view of any of those horrible things that happen when it comes to cybersecurity to push this kind of language on the taxpayer, like, hey, look, you got to give the government more power to secure your internet because otherwise, bad people are going to do bad things. So basically, according to the EFF, the bill doesn't even address the problems that we're having when it comes to all these data breaches and stuff like that. But what it really does is it just increases the ability of the government to surveil people, more or less. And, now that Aaron Schwartz is dead, he was the guy that was kind of the architect of the opposition to this surveillance bill and to this cybersecurity dragnet, more or less, is what this CISA thing is. Well, now there's not much of a opposition to it, and we do what we can at the anti-media. But after they changed the name so many times and all these deceptive tactics, instead of passing this bill on its own, standing alone, where people can stand up and say, no, we don't want this bill passed, they snuck it in to this huge budget bill.
They snuck a lot of things into that omnibus bill. They snuck in part of Trump's immigration plan. They snuck in the removal of the country of origin labeling for meat. They snuck in all sorts of stuff in that horrible bill.
They also ratified the UN Small Arms Treaty, which is rolling out in California January 1st.
Yeah, and this is a tactic that we see done relatively often. And, when you see something go on like this, many times it's in the midst of a major distraction. And this is exactly what this article is about here on the Anti-Media, is that, looking past these distractions and stuff. Or they'll do it on a holiday, or they'll do it on New Year's Eve, or they'll do it on Christmas. And they wait for these opportunistic times to pass these kind of egregious legislations that really do more harm than good, And so CISA got passed. This is something that was relatively uncovered by the media. In fact, they were just talking. The media more or less talked about how the Do Nothing Congress couldn't get their act together and pass this bill. They never really talked about what was actually in it. It's like, well, they got to, just do their, the Democrats and Republicans have to get together and compromise and just pass this thing. Well, yeah, they did. and unfortunately, they did a lot of horrible things when they passed this bill. As Claire was mentioning, it included a bunch of horrible caveats that more or less undermined our rights and our freedom of choice in many respects. And now with CISA, the cyber surveillance dragnet just got a little bit tighter around the noose. The noose around the necks of Americans just got a little bit tighter, and that's just how it is. So anyone wanting to look more into that, as I mentioned, go over to the Anti-Media, click on the link, and there's like 15 hyperlinks there. If you want to go learn more about that, you can click on any of those or more than one. I advise clicking on more than one. So the next story here is about a CIA whistleblower who went to prison for talking to a journalist about some information that he knew. And so this guy's name is Jeffrey Sterling, and he originally had sued the CIA back in 2001 for racial discrimination. Later on, I don't think he won the case, but later on he got fired, and he spoke to James Risen, which is a pretty legitimate journalist that works at the New York Times, and he talked about a scheme called Operation Merlin, which was a CIA operation to infiltrate Iranian intelligence, and actually made it worse because they ended up, through this operation, they sold the Iranians a blueprint to a nuclear, to make a nuclear bomb, and it's like they sold them the blueprint to make a nuclear bomb so that they could later go back and say, oh, look, they bought a blueprint to a nuclear bomb. It's like, oh my God. It's very reminiscent of what the FBI does when it entraps so-called terrorists here in the United States.
There's a backstory to that many people don't know, though, too, is that, part of that was infiltrating Stuxnet into the plans they had for a nuclear power plant to be used for peaceful purposes, with the intention of creating multiple dirty bombs within Iran when they made all of these nuclear power plants basically overheat. And that's what he stopped. A lot of people don't understand. He stopped the genocide of the Iranian people.
Yeah, and for that, he's now rotting in prison for 42 months. And, he's just one of the multiple whistleblowers, American whistleblowers, that are, now rotting in prison, including Chelsea Manning. And, if Edward Snowden ever turns himself in, Snowden, and a bunch of other whistleblowers. Obama has been the harshest president on whistleblowers in modern times. He's much worse than George W. Bush when it comes to that. And, in fact, there was a whistleblower that worked for the Whistleblower Protection Program, which is a federal agency that was fired for blowing the whistle. I mean, this is stuff that you just can't make up. A person that works for the Whistleblower Protection Program blew the whistle on the incompetence and dysfunction within the Whistleblower Protection Program, and that person was fired for being a whistleblower. I mean, this is just shit that you just can't make up. This is all here in number 2 on this list.
It's like a Ziggy cartoon.
I mean, it really is. It's just like a bad movie or something, but unfortunately, it's real life. So, down to number 3. Press freedom, and this is something that we can all talk about because we're all part of the press here, and this whole show is obviously part of the press. The World Press Freedom Index saw the United States slip 29 spots from last year. In 1 year, we slid 29 spots. That means that 48 other countries out of 180 have a better reputation for press freedom than the United States. And, that really comes, I guess for many people that would come as a surprise because, we're told that we live in the land of the free and that freedom of speech is upheld in the United States. And, we overthrow countries because they suppress freedom of speech. You know what I mean? So to see that we've slipped all these slots, I mean, it really is kind of sad, as a journalist and someone who is part of, the Anti-Media, a journalistic organization here in the United States, to see that we slid 29 spots in a year. I mean, shit, how many more slots are we going to slide next year? And how bad is it going to be next year for the press? And we're already being censored in many ways. For at least one day, I think it was at least one day last month, we weren't accessible in Turkey. I know for a period there we were not accessible in France. I mean, shit, both of those countries are members of NATO. They're supposed to be democracies. They're supposed to be free countries that have free elections and that kind of thing. Well, why in the hell are they censoring our website? And if the United States slid 29 spots just this year, next year, how long is it going to be before there's a bunch of websites banned in the United States where it's just, they deem information too dangerous to national security? And, hopefully not the anti-media, hopefully we're not next, but, who's it going to be next in the United States?
But who are we not seeing already? What sites are we already not seeing? We don't actually know what we're being censored from, too. There's no way to necessarily tell what it is that we can't see that they're already filtering out and censoring from us.
Exactly. Exactly. And when you're being censored, how are you supposed to know that you're being censored? You know what I mean? It's really hard to tell. We got a journalist in the an American journalist by the name of Barrett Brown, sentenced to 5 years in prison for linking to some of the leaks that hacker Jeremy Hammond leaked out. And I mean, this guy literally went to prison for hyperlinking to leaked information. I mean, this is insane. I mean, he didn't even do the crime himself. Someone hacked something, leaked information, he hyperlinked to it, and now he's sitting in prison. And this guy's name is Barrett Brown. The hacker is named Jeremy Hammond. We have a great article on Jeremy Hammond on the anti-media because we have a correspondent that is in direct communication with him from prison. And so if you want to learn more about Jeremy Hammond or Barrett Brown, I highly suggest going and checking those articles out.
How are more people not, if that's the kind of litigation they're going after, how are more people, I mean, did they just use him as an example maybe, or do we know how many people they're going after? Because, I mean, literally millions of people hyperlink to leaked information like that. Exactly.
And so it's so hard for them they can't sit there and just arrest a million journalists, So, yeah, I think they tried to make an example out of Barrett Brown. But in the end, much like many things the government tries to do, it kind of backfired and inspired more people to try to expose that kind of information.
Right.
And we all know WikiLeaks is constantly exposing that kind of stuff. And, they're leaking the information to journalists and media. They're not giving the information over to our quote unquote enemy, nation. They're not sitting there and leaking information to Russia or this or that. They're leaking information to journalists. And other countries may benefit from finding the information out. But at the same time, I think one of the major arguments that was made following the whole Snowden fiasco, and I think it was Ron Paul that made this statement, is if the stuff that Snowden was leaking was kind of showing the American people, how the government was spying on them, and they're trying to charge this guy with treason, and treason is by definition is kind of aiding and abetting enemies. Well, what are they saying there? Is the American public the enemy? And it's a question that needs to be asked, because this is kind of, if you look at the legal track record that's going on here with Barrett Brown and the way they've been treating Edward Snowden as treasonous, well, then that would tell you that the American people are the enemy, and that's just brings on a whole another set of implications. Just that brings on a bunch of other implications, man, and so. Press freedom has been under attack here in the United States for a while. All around the world, in fact, there was, I think it was 155 journalists, I believe, this year killed around the world. And in Turkey, in particular, there's been a bunch of attacks against journalists, and Claire has covered this pretty extensively. Especially when it comes to finding out that Turkey is aiding and abetting ISIS. Well, any journalist that stumbles upon information like that, they are winding up dead or disappeared or in prison. Right, Claire?
Yeah, it seems to be a real pattern in Turkey. It's been happening for a few years now. It started with a little bit over a year ago, I think it was September of 2014, with Serena Shem, who had found and was shooting footage of NGOs actually bringing arms and fighters over the border back and forth between Syria and Turkey that were, ISIS supporters. So, and the footage, of course, was never found. And she got into a quote-unquote car accident, and then it's been downhill from there. It's just somebody was killed a journalist was killed last week, in broad daylight. He was gunned down while he was giving a speech in front of everybody, and conveniently the actual moment that he was assassinated was left out of the footage that the police shot. So, it's terrible over there. It just does not seem like a good place to be if you're a reporter, and yet that's where everybody kind of needs to be.
Exactly. And right back here, and this gets a little personal here with the anti-media, right now, a bunch of our admins on our Facebook page are sitting on a 30-day ban, and I know personally myself, I still got another 6 days. I checked today. I got another 6 days on my main account where I can't post, I can't say anything, I can't comment, I can't message anybody, I can't even like posts because we made comparisons to the anti-Islamic sentiment that's running rampant here in the United States, and we're going to get into that later. I think that's our 15th topic. That's running rampant right now. And because we made comparisons to segregation back, pre-60s segregation, and also World War II era internment of the Japanese, and we made comparisons to that, to those things, to the current Islamophobia and xenophobia going around, that got us banned. Everybody on our Facebook page took a at least minimum a warning. Everyone that had been warned before got a ban. I'm 30 days myself, and several of our other people got fully disabled.
You're in the hole, Nick.
Yeah, and Facebook is our main outlet, and for us to be deprived of that, and I know it's Facebook's own policies, but at the same time, it is censorship. And
that's a stunning form of censorship right there, because that's a valid comparison, and it's not like it was blood and guts or anything violent or anything like that. It was a simple comparison. To see that was the cause for censorship and a banning is really, really astonishing.
Yeah, it really is.
You cost someone money.
Yeah, I
think this is going to get a lot worse, unfortunately, in the future. And it makes me pretty scared.
Yeah, I hope not, man. And the funny thing is, the last 3 times that we've took bans, and it's only been 4 months where we've taken 3 bans on the Anti-Media Facebook page. All 3 times was when we criticized Donald Trump. That itself is a little bit telling. And the funniest part of it is that a lot of the times when you get banned, it's from people being offended by what you're posting. These Donald Trump people are supposed to be anti-politically correct. We don't care about political correctness, but if you say something about Trump, well, screw you. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, okay, so you want to be politically correct only when it matters to you. Okay, now it makes sense.
You mean
Can't
Donald
we just
Trump?
move them all to Arizona?
You mean Donald Trump supporters aren't exhibiting the most perfect logic out there? That's shocking to me. I thought they were veritable robots.
Surprisingly, they're intolerant. I don't get it. You'd think that the Trump supporters would be the most tolerant of the bunch, but unfortunately, no, they're not. Hopefully, everyone sensed my sarcasm there. All right, let's moving on to number 4 here. And again, anyone wanting to follow along with us and read up, go to the antimedia.org. It's the top story, and you can click on that. And we're going 1 through 15 here. We better hurry up though, because we're halfway through. We're only on number 4. Multiple activists arrested, charged with felonies for educating jurors about their rights. Most of this stems from jury nullification, which is an age-old legal loophole that's been in existence since the British Empire was in charge of the colonies and stuff. It carried on into after the American Revolution. They included that as part of the quote unquote justice system in the U.S. But jury nullification is basically when a jury can say, hey, look, you're accusing this guy of this crime, but as a jury, we don't really see the crime that he committed. Yeah, the law may be on the books, but that law is illegitimate or it's unjust, and the jury can say, okay, we're not going to charge him with this, even though we think he may be guilty of the crime. We're finding him not guilty because that law just shouldn't be on the books. And so this is why these activists got arrested, because they were spreading information about jury nullification, which is a perfectly valid legal loophole within the justice system, and they're well within their rights to do it, but they're being arrested outside of courthouses for handing out flyers and that kind of thing. Read more on that. We're going to keep going here. Police brutality is a huge story in 2015, and I think a lot of it got kicked off over in late 2014 with the killing of Mike Brown over in Ferguson. And I think Claire actually went to Ferguson and was at least participated in some of what was going on down there. But it really kicked into high gear in 2014, and I'm pretty happy to say that the anti-media was a big part of the early police brutality, police accountability, internet movement that was going on there, and now there's so many different organizations that are keeping tabs on what's going on with the police killings, and of course the most recent case with Tamir Rice that we were talking about at the beginning of the show. But we have one story that really stood out, and this is our number 5 story, is that there was a 6-year-old autistic boy gunned down by the cops because his dad was pulled over. And this story got really convoluted because it turned out that at first the media reported that there was like a warrant out for this guy's arrest, and then that's why all this went down. Then it turned out that maybe there wasn't a warrant, and then maybe it was a personal vendetta, and maybe it was all these other different things. Claire, I believe you're the one that covered this pretty extensively back in November for the anti-media, but this is just a case where it's like a 6-year-old autistic boy, and he was shot, I think 5 times. It wasn't just like, oh, oops, like a stray bullet went and it actually hit No, this little kid was shot 5 times by the cops.
Yeah, and in the head and chest, too. It's not as if, it was random gunfire.
And this story just kind of like highlights the situation we're dealing with right now in the United States when it comes to the state of the policing system here, and I don't think anyone would deny that what we're dealing with is a militarized police force here in the United States. Post 9/11, all the fear and scaremongering going on. I saw a Fox News clip earlier on Facebook from Judge Janine. I'm sure many people are familiar with her. She's probably the biggest fearmonger and the biggest hyperbolic rhetoric spewing individual that exists in the mainstream media. But there was a clip that came out that she put out shortly after the San Bernardino terror attack, where she was saying, "Arm our police departments to the teeth." As if it's not bad enough. They've already got basically tanks rolling around and all kinds of military equipment, night vision, bulletproof vests, machine guns. Shit, they even got grenade launchers out there that they're using to shoot tear gas. Tear gas is a chemical weapon banned by the Geneva Convention. When people use tear gas overseas, it's more or less considered a war crime, and people are using the cops are using tear gas on our own people. And it's like, oh, well, if they weren't in the streets, they wouldn't have to use tear gas. This is like what the cop suckers, this is the excuse that they put out there. But
tear gas is prohibited by the Geneva Conventions as a weapon, even in war. It's a war crime to use it. So it's very interesting that our police feel like it's perfectly justifiable here. Yeah,
you'd almost think that there was a war going on in the streets that was so so serious that it warranted the use of chemical weapons. I mean, I go out on the street and I don't really see a war going on. I see, maybe there's a bunch of people out there that are in poverty and a bunch of people that are dissatisfied with the state of affairs, but I don't see a full-scale war going on, at least right now. And I mean, maybe some would argue, and in fact, on the anti-media, PM Beers had an op-ed that argued that sometimes it seems like the police are trying to provoke full-scale confrontation on the streets. And in fact, Justin King as well wrote some interesting articles on that very topic on the anti-media earlier this year about how a lot of the rioting that went on was caused by the cops and the way they treated people. So in many ways, it kind of seems like they're trying to provoke things to go on here so that they could use their toys and that they could really make a showing of strength like they did after the Boston bombing and things like that. And, the psychological effects that go on with militarization and police state stunts, near martial law scenarios that we saw going on in Baltimore and Ferguson and Boston and
Nick, just think about. I was thinking about this earlier today. Think about the locker room, like in a sports scenario. But think about that locker room at a police station. Think about how they goad each other and ask each other, "You fired your weapon?" I wonder how many times that happens. If the new cop, the fish that hasn't fired his weapon yet, that's even lampooned in a Will Ferrell movie. But they want to use these guns, man. This is part of their mentality, and they want to use these weapons. And they cut off this militarized funding, but it's too late. It's already there. They already have more tanks and weapons and bombs and militarized things, and they know what to do with. And they'd love nothing more. I agree with you. They would love nothing more than for just an absolute riot to break out so they could really show what they can do.
Yeah.
They want to, what I was going to say, because living in a border state with North Dakota, they want to roll out these new taser drones that are coming out that are going to be used for riot control, that are going to pepper spray and, basically electrocute crowds. That's what they want to test, man. They want to see how it works, so they're going to do it in little pockets.
I mean, it's already bad enough to have a bunch of riot cops out there, but at least there's human beings behind the mask and behind the shield. But to think about facing off against drones, man, that's frightening shit, dude. There's no human factor there. They're just going to do what they're told, and someone types in a command, and it's going to be executed.
Man, hackers will rewrite that code and redirect it back at the police department, man. That's what's going to happen.
Hopefully, man. There you go. Solution. Anyone looking for solutions, man, look to your local hacker for solutions. Now, on the bright side of things, as bad as the cops have been, a lot more cops were actually prosecuted this year. And even though we know that the cops that gunned down Tamir Rice were just let off, which is horrible, and I think that they should have been definitely charged with murder. But a lot more cops were charged and prosecuted in 2015 thanks to, in many ways, the police accountability movement and Black Lives Matter activists putting the pressure on and making sure that these crimes the light is shed on these crimes and people know what's going on, because now you can't just brush it under the rug when people have videos of what's going on. And there was that cop, was it in I think South Carolina, that tried to plant a taser on a guy after he shot him. And fortunately some of these guys are being prosecuted, but still the cops are operating with impunity in many, many ways. So we've got a lot of work to do in 2016 to push forward police accountability. Moving on to number 6 here. Earth enters 6th mass extinction. And this is just one of those stories where it's a real wake-up call, because thanks to human involvement in the biosphere here that we call Earth, animal species are disappearing at a rate that's 100 times faster than normal, that are in between mass extinctions. So it's pretty much saying that we're now in the midst of a mass extinction, and there's a bunch of different reasons why. One of them, of course, is commercial farming, deforestation, pesticides, herbicides, the bees dying off, the butterflies dying off. A bunch of species are just in a huge amount of danger right now. And, the climate crisis that we have going on, all the fossil fuels, this thing right now going on up in Los Angeles County in Aliso Canyon with this huge methane leak. I mean, all of these things kind of coincide here, and there's that huge those huge fires out, I believe it was in Indonesia, that are releasing massive amounts of carbon. All these things going on are all contributing and just compounding this crisis that we have, that we're facing with our environment. And all this pollution, all these fossil fuels. Thankfully, there are countries like Costa Rica that are getting 99% of their energy from renewable resources, and people are, some countries are starting to step up, but it's not happening quickly enough.
Yeah, look at Beijing in China. I mean, the people are like ordered to stay inside. The air is so unhealthy; they literally cannot breathe the air in the city. That's not good.
Yeah, and if you need a bigger wake-up call, well then, back to China. They're selling cans of air, like they're like soda cans with air in them. You know what I mean?
And the horrifying thing is the one-child policy just became 2, and they just took a new census, and the population is 1.667 billion, not 1.3. So we're talking about 2 billion within 20 years.
Yeah, and that's these are kind of these are all ingredients that are making the world ripe for a big war. You know what I'm saying? And China,
well, China has to expand. Like they only have 10% of their land is arable, so they're importing food from us. They're importing food from Africa. I mean, they're so ridiculously exposed to anything. We think we're bad. They're 10 times worse.
Yeah,
If they get any shortages at all, they're just going to start taking over land to the south where all the crops are.
Yeah, exactly, and this is the first time in a while where China has a large, kind of united country there. In many ways, thanks to the oppressive government and the heavy-handed tactics they use to keep their citizenry in line, and the way they crack down on dissidents and stuff like that. China is going to be a major threat in 2016, man. And the U.S. is definitely going to be the people that are going to try to stand in their way. And so then, we may see ourselves, because of these resources and because of the fact that they need more, and they've got so many people that they need to take care of. And the U.S. is, of course, looking out for its corporate profits and all those resources that we have a stranglehold on, whether we're talking about the Philippines or whether we're talking about Japanese manufacturing or Malaysia, the natural resources and labor force of Malaysia and all that thing, and this is all ties into the TPP, which we're going to get into hopefully. It all kind of ties back in with China and what's going on over there. So that's something to keep an eye on. Moving into next year. Moving on to number 7 here. Foreign policy, man, going on. ISIS is making headlines constantly here, but ISIS is pretty much small time compared to the wars that the U.S. is carrying out all over the place. In Yemen, it was found that our drone strikes killed more people than Al-Qaeda in Yemen. We're also backing the Saudi Arabians in the Yemeni civil war, which has killed countless and bombed out like over 100 hospital or healthcare facilities. The U.S. also bombed out a Doctors Without Borders hospital in Afghanistan, and our wars in Afghanistan and Iraq are obviously ongoing, and we've also been kind of taking a backdoor approach into Syria, killed 52 civilians in one strike in 2015 in Syria, and I mean, we've got our hands in countless confrontations around the world, whether it's civil wars, whether it's drone strikes throughout Africa. I mean, shit, Africa has turned into, Africa is in a huge way, and not many people have heard about this, but Africa is in a huge way part of the American empire. And now China is also moving into Africa, and so you're going to see a new proxy battleground, not only in the Middle East between Russia and the U.S., but now you're going to see it over in Africa between China and the U.S. And so that's just more stuff that we could expect in 2016 as this rivalry between China and the United States heats up. It's going to take much of the proxy battlefield is going to be taking place in Africa, where we have a very quiet drone empire going on over there. And, this is stuff that we need to be paying attention to. You're not going to hear about this crap on TV. I mean, drone strikes constantly in Libya and Somalia, and now, troops deployed to Cameroon, which is just a small country in Western Africa. We've got our hands in so many countries over there. And around the world, it's well over 100 different countries where we have military installations. I mean, this is a textbook empire by any measure. Now, sticking on this foreign policy kind of angle here, we got the whole thing with ISIS and where it came from, and this is definitely probably the biggest unreported story of 2015. Is the we all know that ISIS is doing horrible things, and we all know that they need to be stopped. But nobody really, the media won't really talk about where the hell did ISIS come from? It's like they just appeared out of nowhere. From what the media tells us, like, well, ISIS just appeared out of nowhere, and we don't know where they came from or how they got started and all that stuff. Well, there's been many investigations ongoing about ISIS, and most roads to ISIS lead back to us. The CIA, according to a DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is a federal agency of the United States, a leaked report that came out showed that the U.S. more or less kind of saw that what our policies over there were going to do, and what it was going to do was create a quote-unquote Salafist principality, and that's exactly what ISIS is. It's a Salafist organization, and they've created a principality known by the name of the Islamic State. And so up until the point where ISIS got out of control and started doing what they're doing now, they were indeed more or less a secret ally of the United States, created by proxy by our allies in the region, which are run by Salafist ideas. Saudi Arabia obviously comes to mind here, Qatar, the other Sunni Gulf states that have a existential rivalry with the Shia superpowers, which would be Iran and Iraq and Syria. And so ISIS was a ploy to kind of overthrow these Shia superpowers, and now it's turned into what we know of it today, and we've lost control of it, and the Saudis lost control of it. There's still a bunch of people within Saudi Arabia, and they've got all this oil money and stuff that are still funding ISIS. And now, according to recent research, we find out that Turkey has also got their hand in there, helping ISIS out in many ways, buying their oil, giving them safe passage to their fighters. And one of the most recent articles we did on ISIS showed that one of their commanders was killed, and they found in his cell phone that he had direct ties to Turkish intelligence officials and stuff like that. So it's a really bad situation that the U.S. has gotten itself into over there. Where on one hand they created this monster, which is ISIS, and it's very much the same way that they created Al Qaeda and stuff like that, with the arming of Bin Laden to fight against the Soviets. They use them for one thing, and then they get out of control, and then it becomes a whole other thing. And so it's our own bad foreign policy coming back to bite us, and our adventurism over there in Iraq, toppling Saddam Hussein, creating a power vacuum. All these things come into play when we talk about ISIS. And so this is one of the things that the media just will not talk about, is where they came from. Well, there it is. ISIS is, at least in a major way, not 100%, but in a major way, created by U.S. policies. and the evidence is there. Go in the article. There's about 12 hyperlinks there that you can follow to credible evidence that shows that we helped create ISIS. Moving on, I'm gonna jump past number 9 because it's about 9/11, and man, there's just so much about 9/11 here. The most recent information is regarding the 28 pages that are hopefully going to be declassified sometime soon. They're sitting in Congress, and the congressmen that have gotten their hands on this information have said that it's going to rewrite everything that we know about what happened on 9/11. Many signs point back to Saudi Arabia, and again, like, why does Saudi Arabia keep being brought up in all these horrible things? And why, if that's the case, why are we still allies with them? Why do we sell them billions of dollars in weaponry and military aid and, well, oil? You know, they got a bunch of oil, and they're geopolitically strategic. They, as we mentioned with ISIS, they're helping to overthrow countries like Syria, and they help undermine countries like Iran and things like that. So, you know,
and they fight our dirty wars too, like against Yemen.
Exactly. They do the dirty work for us so that we can sit, you know, America could sit back and say, oh, wow, that's horrible. That huge civil war in Yemen and all those people dying, that's really bad. That's really sad. But at the same time, we're giving billions in weapons to these guys so that they can do what they're doing. You know, and yeah, exactly, man. They do the dirty work for us. And Saudi Arabia, I mean, they don't have to pretend anything. They behead people in public, you know. I mean, it's just, you know, they get away with this kind of shit. They can do what they want.
They, I believe, have the most F-16s of any country in the world besides us. So, you know, we use them as an Air Force arm, and of course they're pumping their own, you know, fuel. So, great military for us to have in our pocket.
Exactly. Moving on from that, anyone wanting to go through 9/11, we got plenty of stuff on that on the website. Go search it up. Great thing to do for New Year's. Go on the Anti-Media and search our 9/11 archives. The FDA approved OxyContin for use in children. I mean, this is insane. This is like, what in the F are we thinking here? 11-year-olds are now allowed to be prescribed OxyContin. And this is like, what? OxyContin for kids? Isn't this stuff, isn't it an opiate? Isn't it made from like heroin? But yeah, I mean, they're allowing it to be prescribed to kids, and the opiate epidemic in the United States has become overwhelming at this point. It's been found that 75% of high school students who are now hooked on heroin started off by abusing pharmaceuticals, which, you know, they probably maybe either first got from their doctor or from their parents and jacked it from their parents' medical cabinet, or they got from their friends, and then they started buying on the black market. And when that eventually, when the addiction builds so much, that no longer suffices for your needs, and then you end up just going straight for heroin, and that's what's happening. And we've got a huge epidemic in the United States when it comes to opiate addiction and now heroin addiction.
And if you think that jumps to extreme, I have a personal family member that went the exact same route from a work injury and became addicted to heroin, and the spiral went down the hill from there. So it's real.
Yep, I got a buddy. Same thing happened to him in Arizona too, where they have egregious drug laws, and he got hooked on it after an injury, and then after they pulled his prescription, he turned to heroin, and then he started using heroin, and he got caught. Now he's going to go to jail too. And so that just feeds into the whole prison industrial complex and stuff. This is a major underreported story, and now thankfully it's being reported by outlets like Vice and things like that, which Vice sucks, but whatever, at least they're covering this stuff. But we've got a bunch of articles on the Anti-Media regarding opiates, and it's a huge topic, man. It's big pharma, dude. You know, it's huge. We're going to have to start, I'm going to have to go through the rest of these really quick so that we can get in some predictions here. Cannabis is making major strides in the U.S., and this is one of the positive things here. The feds finally acknowledge that cannabis is a viable cancer treatment, and we all know about the complete legalization in Colorado and Washington and Alaska and even in D.C., and you know, hopefully in California come 2016. So hopefully the war against cannabis continues to be rolled back, and then we can continue rolling back the war on drugs altogether, because prohibition against drugs just doesn't work. Cocaine should be legal. I don't care. I mean, heroin should be legal too. I mean, shit, they're already selling it to us in pills. It should be legal, and so that we can finally get it out in the open and talk about it, so it doesn't have to be in the shadows anymore, so people can actually get treatment. And Portugal has gone that route. Several other countries have gone that route. Ireland is starting to go that route as well. And all signs from these countries show that it is much more positive to legalize all drugs and then deal with it as a health issue rather than keeping it criminalized and throwing people in cages for using drugs, and they're harming their own bodies. Yeah, and many of them are addicted. It's a health issue. It's not a criminal issue. Moving on here. Claire, let's talk about Nestle for a couple of minutes here, because we really helped crack this whole thing with Nestle going on in the United States, and it's number 12 on our list. Nestle paid $524 to plunder California's public water resources. Now, keep in mind, they took 27 million gallons of water out of California National Forest in one location for $524.
Yeah,
that's a really good deal.
Permit, yeah, it is, and it's on a permit that was expired in 1988 too. So they're trying to get, and they put an injunction to get Nestle to stop drawing water from San Bernardino National Forest. So we'll see what happens. It's very little. There's very little being done, but it's a big, big step, and hopefully they'll be stopped, because it's ridiculous that they're being allowed to do what they're doing, and they're creating all sorts of environmental havoc with the watershed in the area. So.
And Claire, much applause. Anyone wanting to find out more on this story, just go to the antimedia.org and type in Nestle. But much applause to you, Claire, for cracking this thing open and helping to get the exposure it needed. We made the front page of Reddit on this story, and it helped lead to this lawsuit. And so that was very much thanks to you, Claire.
And kudos on the Porter Ranch gas leak too. One of my friends now is pissed off and getting involved because she saw your article.
Oh, so. one of our team members may be suffering from direct exposure to that stuff. Very bad. And
it's bad up there.
Now that Claire, after you covered it, that one also made the front page of Reddit. Now all of a sudden it's like mainstream news. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, now we're going to cover this stuff. It's like, well, where were you guys a couple months ago when it started? That didn't make the list, but I think it's just because it's such a new topic. All right, here's an important one. Establishment caught manipulating news to fit narratives. They did it with Freddie Gray. Fox News got caught employing a fake CIA agent who later got arrested because he was a fake. CBS spreading Islamophobia. At least the public is starting to catch on to this. 7% of Americans found that they have a great deal of trust in mainstream media. I guess that's a positive thing. And
everyone over 90.
Yeah, everyone over 90 still believes in it, but everyone else is like, maybe not. But yeah, we're making strides in undermining the mainstream media. The mainstream media is owned by these like 5 or 6 corporations who are all owned by these other interests, including military industrial contractors, energy oligarchs, things like that. So these big mainstream corporate media outlets are kind of owned by the same oligarchs that run the rest of the country. So they create narratives that fit, into their profit margins and things like that. Number 14, the TPP, probably the biggest story all year and of the past several years. We've talked about it plenty of times here on the show, but man, the TPP needs to be stopped. Looks like it's not going to be. I haven't heard much from it, but I know this 2-month public comment period is coming to an end pretty soon here.
I think they're delaying it until after the 2016 election.
They talked about it. They might. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. The TPP is huge. And then the Islamophobia factor, dude, this is just total madness. The United States is a country built on religious freedom. It's time to stop persecuting people just because they believe in a certain religion. Make it worse. Thanks all for tuning in. Anti-Media 2015. Catch us 5 days a week, same place, same time. Peace out.